What's shaking, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Orangebloods Texas Football Channel on YouTube. I'm Geoff Ketchum, joined as always by Anwar Richardson. Do us a solid. If you can remember, click on the subscribe button, like the video. If either of those two things move you at all, we would appreciate it. Today, Anwar, it's our first edition of Buy or Sell here on the YouTube channel, which means we're taking the questions from the subscribers at Orangebloods, from people on Twitter, and taking them on full stride, you and me, back and forth. It's like a game of ping pong. It's back in the day when I was doing radio with Chad Hastings and Dustin McComas was our producer. He was, it was like a game of ping pong. And anyway, I won't go too far into that. It'd be helpful if we had like a Tony Reale, Dustin McComas person to serve as the third party to just hit us back and forth. But we're gonna make this thing go. I'll ask you the question. Where do you want to begin? You want me to go first, or do you want to go first?
Why don't you go first? You go first. And tell me if you're going off of Orangebloods or Twitter.
I'm doing both.
Okay, well, just give me a setup for it so I know who's who.
I will be reading the names of the person whose question I'm taking.
Okay.
And then we'll just go from there.
All right. Hit me. What's the first one?
All right. Buy or sell number one. I'm trying. All right. Buy or sell number one. This is from 05 Prey on Orangebloods. If a coach doesn't get off to a very hot start in the first year, win total being at or above expectations, maintaining recruiting momentum is near impossible. Buy or sell?
I'll buy. And the reasons why I'll buy is I know it's tough because I know year one, really year two is kind of the real year, and everyone gets kind of a transition class. So, I mean, technically it's kind of tough with Sarkeesian because he kind of had like a little semi-transition class, but there was still more than half of that class that had already been signed. So this is kind of be his first one. But the reason why I will buy it is, I don't think your momentum is ever as hot as it is, that first year. And then when people start seeing the product on the field, that becomes a problem where if it doesn't match the expectations, I think it sets you back. And I think one of the things we've talked about on this channel a lot, Ketch, is that Texas is behind a lot of the more established programs that they recruit against, right? So they're behind Oklahoma in the Big 12. They're behind Alabama, who comes in here nationally. They're behind Ohio State that comes in here from a national brand and takes the guys and needs to a certain degree behind LSU. So that's all those reasons why that Texas cannot get off to a slow start. And because, again, you still have a generation of kids who we talked about before that. How old were they when Vince Young won a national title? I mean, 4, 5. I mean, that's how old we are. So think about how young they were when it happened. So for me, it's a buy.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that where Herman, Freudian slip there. But what I'm about to say is what Sarkeesian would run into is the same thing that Herman ran into in year two, which is we want to take a wait and see approach and show me in the fall that you are closer or really on the path to accomplishing the things that you are saying that you are going to accomplish. And then I'll take that leap of faith. That ends up being a really slow death. We talked about this with the Brockermeyers last year. When you start getting the dreaded, let me see how you look in the fall, that is very much a I like you, but. And this is going to be I think this is going to be a top 5 class when it's all said and done for Steve Sarkeesian, if not top 5, very close to that. Will it be a top 5.5? Not top 10, but not quite top 5. It could be somewhere in between there where it's not all time historically memorable, but a really, really good first class. I don't know what 9-3 does to recruiting for the elite of the elite kids in a 2023 class. And it feels like one of those numbers that Vegas would set. What would be the number that keeps recruiting momentum from year one going into year two? And what would potentially put a little bit of a break applied to it? I'm not quite sure what that number is, but it wouldn't be crazy to say that it needs to be at least 9, especially if you're including a bowl game. So, at that point, you're talking 9-4, maybe 9-5 if you played in the Big 12 championship game with 8 wins, which would seem hard to do. So yeah, I'm with you.
All right. Here's an interesting one for you. How about buy or sell for you, Catch? In 2 years, the entire initial staff is intact. Buy or sell?
Sell. Okay. Sell. The only staff that I've ever really covered where it went longer than that, Herman went out of his way. It was problematic that Herman wanted to keep the staff intact. When Mac Brown was first hired, the same thing kind of happened. They put into the contracts that, that if these guys stuck around for 4 or 5 years, that there would be bonuses that would kick in that would behoove them for staying. And all these coaches want to keep their initial staffs together. I think after 2 years, really good coaches aren't afraid to tweak a staff to just if they feel like it's needed. And I think Steve Sarkeesian would probably, and his assistant coaches would probably say after 2 years, if one of us hasn't received a better opportunity, if a coordinator hasn't received a head coaching job opportunity, if an assistant coach hasn't received a coordinator opportunity somewhere else, I think they would view that as a bit of a disappointment. This staff comes in with really high expectations for itself. In a weird way, not having someone leave after 2 years, I think would be maybe a sign that they've just been pretty good.
So here's the thing. So what you're alluding to is something that when I covered the Tampa Bay Buccaneers many moons ago, Tony Dungy once said something. I've quoted this often in my columns in Orangebloods, but he would say the sign of a healthy coaching staff is when assistants are being promoted or talked about to become coordinators, and coordinators are being promoted or talked about to become head coaches. That was what he viewed as a sign of a healthy staff. The biggest indictment on the previous 2 coaches and their coaching staffs were during their tenure, none of those guys got promoted. We can't think of a person that got promoted under Charlie Strong that was an assistant that became a coordinator, or a coordinator that became a head coach. And the same thing goes, for Tom Herman. Now, Jay Norvell ends up being this weird exception, but Jay Norvell, no one hired Jay Norvell away from Texas. Jay Norvell was just able to kind of, maneuver his way into a position. So that's what you want idealistically. Like you want, if you hired a guy from Nick Saban, because idealistically you want that staff to have turnover. Nick Saban doesn't lose sleep, Catch, when he has guys that, are going. That's the expectation at Bama, that you're going to come here for 2 years, you're going to build up your resume, and then you're out. And then we're going to hire somebody else to replace you who may be as good as you, if not better. So that to me is it. To me, if it's not happening, Catch, if 2 years from now we're still talking about the same guys who are still here, then to your point, it's a good program. It's not great. It's probably not competing for championships, and it's probably not healthy at that point.
I think we definitively say that they wouldn't have won a championship.
Absolutely. Because now
none of you by year 2.
Yes.
Someone's getting a job.
Somebody should be. So somebody should be. I mean, if it's even if you say it's not Kwiatkowski on a defensive side because it's a little bit harder for defensive coordinators, someone on the offensive side surely should be viewed as, this should be the next guy who could be a coordinator somewhere, because he worked on the Steve Sarkeesian staff. He was under Steve Sarkeesian's offensive mind. If that's not happening, then this thing isn't going the way anyone expected.
Moving along to another question, Anwar, this time going to Twitter from Dwayne Bingham on Twitter, at Dwayne Bingham on Twitter. Buy or sell, record headed into the OU game is 3-2. Just as a reminder, the schedule for the first 5 games of the season would be Louisiana at home, at Arkansas, Rice at home, Tech at home, at TCU. Buy or sell, 3-2.
I'm going to buy. I I think Louisiana or Arkansas is a trap game for one of the two. I think, and I probably lean a little bit more towards Louisiana in the first game of the season, where just you got a new team that's trying to work out all the kinks. And that game just has trap written all over it. Look, I am not betting against Gary Patterson when he faces a Texas team. I don't know what Gary Patterson does for the rest of the year. I just know that he gets these teams up for Texas. And every coach that has come against him, Gary Patterson has found a way. So Gary Patterson, he beat Texas, I believe it was 7 out of 10 times in the past decade. So no. And where's that game at? Is that here? Catch? Is that game the TCU Texas game?
The TCU game's in Fort Worth. It's part of a really difficult non-home schedule for the Longhorns this year.
Yeah, I'm gonna buy. I'm gonna buy it.
Yeah, I'll sell.
Okay.
I'm at this point, TCU is a game that I think I would give to TCU. I'm not ready to say that Louisiana and Arkansas is a split, but it could be. I mean, it could be. That is within the realm of possibilities. And I'll say 4-1, but that's a soft buy. 4-1, and then that then comes Oklahoma. Then they're Oklahoma State at Baylor, at Iowa State. That next little stretch is really difficult. At TCU, Oklahoma State, at Baylor, at Iowa State. That's 4 out of 5 games not at home. The only home game is against Oklahoma State, a team that Texas plays better on the road than they do at home against. And, that will be the stretch that ultimately defines the season. It's not out of the realm of possibilities that Texas would be 4-0 going into it. But I think it might be just as possible that they'd be 3-2 coming out of that as 4-1 or 4-0 going into that game.
Hey, this is a good one here, right, Catch? Buy or sell. Based on Anwar's Sunday pulpit, we are all way overestimating Sark's ability to be much better than Herman. Is it the staff that is more reason for optimism? Let's just eliminate the last part. Let's just go to the main question. Based on Anwar's pulpit, we are all way overestimating Sark's ability to be much better than Herman. Buy or sell?
Buy. I don't say it without a little trepidation, but again, the step that has to be taken, Tom Herman had the Texas offense statistically in back-to-back seasons as the second best in the Big 12 behind Oklahoma. So, the question for Sarkeesian as an offensive guy is dethroning Oklahoma, not just being second best in the Big 12, but dethroning Oklahoma. And on the offensive side of the ball, like being as good or better, that's the challenge. Being second best is something that Texas in the Big 12 has already been the last couple of years. They really didn't have anything to show for it. They were at their best under Herman when they were a middling offense in the Big 12, but had a good Todd Orlando defense that, really was the thing that they could hang their hat on from week to week. But for the most part, the other areas the offense has to get better. And then the hope is that the staff as a whole collectively is a significant upgrade. And I think that it is. And then you're hoping that Sarkeesian as a game manager has his finger on the pulse of being able to hold that side of things down in ways that Herman admittedly, I think, was distracted. One of the reasons why he didn't want to touch the offense is because he wanted to be able to focus everything on game management during the games. He wasn't ever great, ever at any point as a game manager. It probably got more difficult for him when he added more responsibilities to his plate. Sarkeesian has to do that now. And it's been a while since Sarkeesian's had to do that. He has not had to be on the field, in charge of the entire team, and in control of the offense really since his USC days. It is, I think that last step is the hardest one to take, no matter what. Even if Herman was around, even if Sarkeesian had a fifth-year quarterback coming back, like going from very good to great is the most difficult step to take. And very few actually do it. There's a reason why Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, throw Oklahoma in there. There's a reason why they do it all the time, and there aren't many schools breaking into that club. I mean, Georgia has done it to some degree, but they're not even consistently on the same level as the four schools that I just mentioned. So, it's hard to take that last step. And that's what Sarkeesian's been hired to do. It's not shooting from the layup line.
Yeah, I would buy for it just with the understanding to be clear. I think typically, Coach, when a coach is fired, it's because they were just an absolute failure. Tom Herman wasn't an absolute failure. He wasn't what everyone thought he would be, and he didn't live up to a lot of expectations, but you can't look at it and say he was an absolute failure. So it's easy to say something like that as relates to maybe like Charlie, right? You could say like that thing went bad, like it was 6-7, 5-7, 5-7. And it's easy to just, at that point, if you want to shit on Charlie, you can shit on Charlie. But in this case, you have to say, okay, he just wasn't what we wanted as far as being great and dethroning Oklahoma and being consistent. Recruiting wasn't going the way that you had hoped for, like those type of things. But you're asking him to take a really good product and make it great. And so because of that, and because of how difficult that is, because you and I at this moment aren't quite sure what the first 5 games looks like, going back to that question, right? Because we're a little unsure. That's what we got to say. Look, we got to pump the brakes and see what he does. And obviously, if you're a Texas fan, you're optimistic that Sarkeesian takes your program to the next level.
All right, I got to ask you a question. Are we the type of people on the YouTube channel that's going to keep it a buck and like ask difficult questions and uncomfortable questions at times? Or is that not what we're going to be about? Because the next question I had sent to me via direct message, and it was stressed that it was something that you and I needed to have a conversation about while acknowledging that it is a bit tricky.
Let's do it.
All right. Buy or sell. This comes from this is touchy. We won't stay on it long.
Let's go.
But AZ Horns from Orangebloods asks, with regards to Sarkeesian and his offensive prowess and kind of following, and it's one of the reasons why I'm asking this question is because it falls in line with what we were just talking about with Sarkeesian and the expectations that he go from very good to great. AZ Horns mentions that the last time Sarkeesian was a head coach, he was dealing with alcohol issues. And that obviously that's kind of what brought down his USC reign as head coach. In your mind, is there any way at all to quantify the impact of how much better I guess the question is, buy or sell, Steve Sarkeesian can be much better as a head coach because of the different place that he's in his life right now with regards to kind of the demons that he's had to battle throughout his career?
I mean, there's a potential buy that's there. Look, anybody who has been through something in life, if you're able to come out on the other side of that, you should be able to come out a better person. I think many people have fought demons in their life and been able to slay the demon. It's not an easy process to do. But if you've dealt with anyone who's dealt with substance abuse or alcohol abuse or any kind of abuse in life, if they're able to get the help, which he's clearly said that he's received, then you have the potential to be a lot better. And then the potential of then sitting there and studying under Nick Saban, as a potential benefit of saying, all right, now I've been able to go here and learn from this person and really be able to reshape my thinking of how I thought a program should be run. And one of the things he talked about previously is like he was young when he took over and he was a head coach, and he kind of talked about now having a little bit more experience of being a little bit more older and wiser. I know who I am now at 47 years old, and it's a little bit different than I was at 37 years old or in my younger 30s. So I'll buy that. I'll buy that. He's gone through things. He's gone through the hell. He's gone through the fire, and he's coming out a better person. That's potentially a better coach. I'll take that. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think you really nailed that one perfectly. I think that more so than the elephant in the room of people being nervous to talk about the alcoholism issue and like just the issues that he had in that area, I think growing up and just living life, and like you said, the difference between 37 and 47, I think the thing that Sarkeesian has going for him from a 30,000 foot view of his tenure at Texas is that he's just lived more life, and he's in a better spot today to be a great coach than he was when he was at USC in Washington. When he did a really good job at Washington. I think he would argue, and I think people in that program would argue, that program was going places, and that whatever we want to say with regards to the battle that ultimately sidetracked his career for a little bit and that he's overcome, that he would have continued to do a really good job. I think you learn from everything. And so you just add all of that up. And I think that he's now not too young and he's not too old. This should be the sweet spot for Steve Sarkeesian as a coach in general. And I will point to Mack Brown, because one of the things that Mack would always mention when he was at Texas was that he needed his failure at Tulane, where he was the athletic director and the head coach at the same time. He needed the failures and the hard seasons there, along with the really hard seasons that he went through at North Carolina. Those 4, 5, 6 seasons combined that really started his career. He always felt like he needed that experience so that when he was in his 40s and he came to Texas, that he had kind of learned how to operate the game without the manual. And I think that's the difference between Sarkeesian now versus his earlier tenure. That was still kind of on the job training. And I think Tom Herman will have this too. Tom Herman was on the job training at Texas. And I think Tom Herman would probably admit that out loud. Like, yeah, man, like I was only a third-year head coach when I showed up at Texas. I had to learn some things, and I'm different today than I would have been then. I think it is part of the deal. And so, yeah, like I think one of the things that should excite Texas fans the most about Sarkeesian is that if you were ever going to have him as your head coach, this moment in time right here is as good as it probably would ever get. He's experienced. He's kind of in his prime as an offensive mind and producer on the coaching stage. And, this should be like the Luke Skywalker part, like in Return of the Jedi, not the Luke Skywalker part in Empire Strikes Back when he's still getting his arm cut off.
Fair enough. All right. I've got one. It's not really a buy or sell, but you know what? I still think it should be addressed here on the YouTube channel. And this is one's from Orangebloods.
Okay.
And he goes, it's Eric Riceburg. By the way, I didn't put in my readers because I am old, speaking of being 47. So why are you guys trying to push everything to YouTube and podcasts? Do you figure that's where the money is? We are already getting inundated with advertising at every turn. How much blood can you squeeze out of a turnip? Not really a buy or sell question per se.
Well, I think the answer to that question is one of the challenges that we have at orangebloods.com, as we've been a market leader for 20 years. We're literally we're 10 days away from celebrating the 20th birthday of orangebloods.com. For the last 16 years of our existence, we've been the number one site in the Rivals network and the number one team site in all of the college team subscription industry in terms of subscriptions. But it's our goal to think about what the next 10 years looks like. And how do we stay market leaders? How do we continue to grow at Orangebloods? How do we, from, I think a monetary standpoint, how do we continue to grow in a way that allows us to invest in infrastructure that sees us able to hire more recruiting reporters and hire someone to, another football person to put under Anwar's wing so that when he goes to the stadium, he's got somebody to assist him. In order for us to grow, we have to grow. The YouTube audience is a little bit of a different audience than Orangebloods itself. I think our goal with the YouTube channel is to ideally grow that thing to, let's say, 50,000 subscribers. Of that 50,000 subscribers, somewhere between 20 and 40% of that is probably an orangebloods.com subscriber. That means 60 to 80% of those eyeballs will be people who otherwise would not be using orangebloods.com, following us at orangebloods.com. And it basically means we're trying to tap into a second audience that allows us to grow from now through, let's say, 2030 in a way that allows us to continue to grow as a company and build in strength instead of being the newspaper of 2021, which is to hang. It took the newspaper too long to adjust, too long to realize that the world around them was changing. It's our goal at orangebloods.com to not have that happen. We simply view the YouTube medium as a vehicle that helps us get there. The fact that this is all content that doesn't take away from anything that we're doing at Orangebloods, same as the podcast. I mean, there's a reason why people on Orangebloods typically don't complain about the videos in the podcast anymore, is I think we've proven over the course of, let's say, 36 to 48 months that it won't be an issue. It's about adding more content, more quality, more ideas, and more ways for us to both reach a larger audience and increase our revenue. And that is the biggest explanation for what we see behind the move towards increasing our YouTube presence. Thanks for answering the question. I'm glad I could answer that fully, I think.
Yeah, and you did a good job. And let me just, you're the publisher, so obviously you should speak for the company, but let me just piggyback that a little bit. Catch the price, the subscription price for Orangebloods has been the same for how many years?
It's never changed. It's been $9.95 for 20 years.
You can't think of any industry that you subscribe to something and there hasn't been a change within a couple of years, whether it's been your Netflix or your Amazon Primes or, your cable companies. Like, everything usually has some sort of an increase. So, this is just basically thinking outside of the box. And as a former newspaper person, I can tell you what it looks like when you're slow to change. I remember being in a newsroom and attending a newsroom meeting where they told us, this is back in the Tampa Tribune that no longer exists, and there's a reason why, but they told us, don't get on Twitter because Twitter will never take off. We had a meeting, Catch, where they literally told us, don't worry about Twitter. This is never going to be a thing. People will always love the newspaper. They'll always love the touch of it. They'll always love the feel of it. The internet is never going to be anything big. Don't worry about it. And what happened was, clearly the internet took off and the newspaper was playing catch up and playing from behind, and they still really haven't caught up. And there's a reason why my newspaper doesn't exist. There's a reason why newspapers across the country don't exist. And so it's just forward thinking, outside the box thinking, to make sure, to your point, like we stay relevant. So anyway, just want to piggyback on that.
Going back to Orangebloods, next buy or sell question comes from America_007, the patriotic Bond fan. America_007.
All right.
The Arkansas, buy or sell the Arkansas game will be the craziest atmosphere Texas fans see this year for those that go. As a side note, sold out and prime time. Not one Arky fan I know thinks they lose this game. Feels like 2014, and I was at that game with Pig fans. Buy or sell, craziest atmosphere all year that traveling Texas fans will see will be in the Arkansas game in Fayetteville.
Buy, because there's very few things that are going to compare to that. Now, the Oklahoma State game, is that in Stillwater, Catch?
That's in Austin.
That's in Austin. Okay, so Oklahoma State has a really good, fan base, and I think they're really enthusiastic. The fans of Stillwater are great about supporting their team. But I would say a buy, because the only other crazy game per se is, Texas OU. But if we go back to normal, Catch, we're talking about one half of the stadium. So you're basically with your brethren on one side of you and your enemies on the other side of you. The only time you really have to interact is in concession stands, walking around the fairgrounds, things to that effect. But being in a hostile environment on a Saturday night, oh, no, this will definitely be, from a hostile environment standpoint, something that Texas won't see again after week 2.
I think ironically Texas OU could be third this year for atmosphere, because that Iowa State game, if it's prime time, could turn into the biggest game of the season. Because if Texas were to lose to Oklahoma, that game in Ames becomes a really must. It feels like that could be your number 2 and number 3 in the conference. And that could be, I don't know, top 5, top 10 Iowa State. They're going to start the season in the top 10. Mm-hmm. So even if they lose to Oklahoma during the season, if they're running the table elsewhere, that's going to be a top 10 matchup, at least from, I think, the Iowa State side of things. We'll see where Texas is. But that game could have a lot going on it, and that could be the people in Ames think that this is a special season that they're getting ready to embark on. They believe that they've been waiting their entire lives to have a team with 20 plus returning starters all come back to give it a go. And that may be the game that they ratcheted up for, depending on when that game is played. TV will matter, but that feels like a primetime matchup for me. I think that one could be a sneaky dark horse for rabid atmosphere. But yeah, man, Arky's going to be hot. Real quick, I'm going to ask back-to-back.
We go back-to-back. Okay, I'll put it down. Okay, go for it.
And then I'll let you either go back-to-back, go one more.
Yeah, I get to do 2 as well.
This is from Hot Cheeto on Orangebloods.
Oh, yeah, I know who that is.
Buy or sell, it's possible for chicken wings to be too big, and wings that are on the smaller side are actually better than wings that are on the bigger side. Buy or sell?
Okay, wings that are on the smaller side are better than no. Too big? That's a fantastic question. I don't know if I've ever had chicken wings that are too big, but I've seen them too small. Like, for instance, like the little Pizza Hut ones, right? You ever see those little ones? You're like, yeah. Nah, these aren't really wings. They're too small to be wings, and they don't taste as well. So I wouldn't go that. And so I don't know if it's possible to be too big. I don't know. I've never seen it. No, I've never seen it. You know what? I've never seen it, because you know what? Rolling Rooster has really good wings. I don't know if you've ever eaten there. And their wings are big, and their wings taste fantastic. I don't think it's not possible. As I'm talking this out, I think of Rolling Rooster wings, and I think to myself, man, those are some of the biggest wings I've had. And those wings are amazing. They've got a place that I think is about to open here off of 620, free plug for Rolling Rooster. So no, I'll sell on that. Chicken wings can't be too big.
I'll buy. They can be.
Really?
And I would like to
think, are you eating that?
If you're watching this video and you followed my career at all, I know a thing or two about chicken wings. Literally, people at Orangebloods believe that after this video, you'll be able to find me at Pluckers today, right? That's my rep. So what I'm going to say, look, this isn't a referendum on big chicken wings. This isn't to say that the biggest chicken wings suck and that discard all of your monster chicken wings that exist. I can say, however, that sometimes the big super chicken wings are a little too meaty on. I'm really thinking about the drumsticks here and not the flappers. There are times when a drumstick can be so thick that I think the quality of the chicken can be sometimes a little fatty and sometimes just not as cooked as well, because let's say you're used to cooking them all at the same time. Let's say that, I don't know how long chicken wings have to cook, but let's say it's like 8 minutes. But then you got this really big chicken wing that is bigger than the other wings. You cook it the same amount of time, and it's just a little different than the other wings because of its size and potentially how it was prepared. I'll give you an example. If I go to Pluckers, I almost always order all flappers. But if for some reason I forget, and let's say I order like a 10 or 15 piece and it comes out, if I see one of the drums is really big, it's like the last one that I want. It's the one that I have the least amount of expectations for all of the reasons that I've outlined. There's actually a perfect wheelhouse, I think, for the perfect wing. And I'm not telling you I won't eat that big heifer. What I'm telling you is I will wait until I eat all of the other wings because I judge them to be the better wings. I think size is deceptive in the chicken wing game. I don't know that I necessarily buy that the tiny wings are better than the ones that are the perfect size, but yeah, but I would probably go really small, but not like the little Domino's small or whatever you were talking about, but like, like if we were to go to Pluckers, I would prefer their smaller wings over their large wings for the reasons that I've outlined.
That's such an interesting. So I've just literally in real time, I've texted my man Sam from Big City Wings out in Houston. Shout out to Sam. And
we've got an Orangebloods happy hour there next Wednesday, by the way.
Oh, tell everyone about it.
Happy hour next Wednesday.
Big City Wings. Which location though?
I don't know. I wasn't prepared to talk about this.
All right. Well,
I didn't know that there was more than one location.
Okay, it's Wednesday, huh? Okay.
Yes.
Maybe I'll try to go. Okay. Well, I'll ask him about that. So I'm gonna have. So here's my two questions. And one will be a player question, and we'll get back to football. Okay.
Okay.
Longhorns 27 said, okay, so the buy or sell, the perfect sides to go with barbecue are potato salad and mac and cheese.
Those are the best?
Yes.
Sell. I mean, look, it's subjective. Back in the day, when I worked in the barbecue industry at Burt's Barbecue, the default two sides for any plate was potato salad and beans. And the substitute on the potato salad could be coleslaw. But by and large, at least my experience from working in an old school, started in 1969, if I'm not mistaken, barbecue joint. Shout out to Burt's Barbecue. I went and had a turbo. We're just like endorsing restaurants left and right here.
I know.
Unpaid endorsements. But I love the guys at Burt's Barbecue, the Far West location. It was literally the last meal that I had when I was in Austin last week. And the default sides are potato salad and beans. And those aren't my I wouldn't eat either. If I'm being honest, if it's me, it's probably mac and cheese and something else, depending on what's available on the menu. But because I'm not really like the traditional barbecue, other than mac and cheese, I'm not really like a beans, potato salad, coleslaw fan. But the traditional, I think, it's called the tried and true, at least the way we were always told of the sides, beans and potato salad.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the hard part is it's in an ideal world when people can actually make it well, those sides well, that sounds great. But you and I both know that you've tasted some coleslaw that's been trash, some potato salad that has been trash. It's harder to mess up the baked beans as much. But the other ones, I've tasted some bad ones. So honestly, it just depends on the restaurant, to be honest with you, and who can do it. All right, let's get back to football. Okay.
Yes.
So
by the way, back in the day, apparently I used to make some badass coleslaw.
Okay. All right. Rumor has it. Okay. So
I never tasted it, but people told me that.
Okay. Buy or sell. The QB that Texas picks this year will be a better quarterback than Sam was last year. This is by Hook'em Chargers. The QB they picked this year will be better QB than Sam was last year. Buy or sell. That's a good one.
We're talking this year.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't quantify it. He didn't quantify it by saying overall career.
I mean, I think buy on the overall career. Like if we're just talking about passer rating, I think Hudson Card specifically, who I'm thinking about here. But I think Casey Thompson. It's so close. Sam was really in the hall of pretty good last year when the final numbers, like that 155 rating, isn't terrible. It's not great. It is in the pretty good stage.
6th round pick.
Nobody's going to hold it against me if I'm wrong on this. So I'll buy. Either Hudson Card and or Casey Thompson. Either one of them goes better than $1.60 this year. So I'll buy.
I'm going to buy. I'm not going to go heavy in it.
Yeah.
But I will say this: there were times last season and throughout, Sam's career where there was some games where there was like some lapses there. The accuracy was kind of like, what's going on? Some balls being thrown in the dirt. You realize that, you needed all 6'5" of Colin Johnson to make some of those catches that he were making that were pretty damn dynamic catches. So I will buy on that. But I will say this: just. Sam Ehlinger and Tom Herman are kind of in the same boat where they both were pretty good. They weren't great. And what you're asking the next coach to do or the next quarterback to do is go from good to great. At the end of the day, Sam Ehlinger was still a 6th round pick. So you were talking about good enough to get drafted in the NFL. But that being said, now you're talking about someone being upper echelon of first team all Big 12, like in that kind of conversation, that's a little bit tough. So I'll buy it, but I'm not going to stand on the table for it.
Feels like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire when you get to like 64,000 and then you have to make that decision.
Yeah.
Like it's no gimme that you'd get that far if you did it again, and you could get the next question, like you really could, but you might lose it all too. So it's hard to say. All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to end this on rapid fire.
All right.
I'm going to ask you a stream of Twitter questions.
Okay. I won't take long.
No explanation behind the answers. Just buy or sell. Okay. This is from Chris Bennett. Buy or sell. Bijan Robinson will be the first 1,000-yard rusher since Deontay Foreman in 2016 and only the third since 2007 when Jamal Charles did it. Buy or sell?
Buy. Shout out Chris Bennett.
All right. This comes from @Pio Davia from Twitter, and that appears to be his name as well. Buy or sell? We, that being Texas, have the potential to have a top 2 defense in the Big 12. Buy or sell? Texas can be a top 2 defense.
Sell. What do you do? What are you doing on that one?
Buy. Potential is not the same as.
Potential. Yeah. Oh, then I'll switch it. If we're just playing semantics, then sure. Buy.
Yes. But it's an important one. It's not they will be a top 2. It's they have the potential to be a top 2. Buy or sell? This one comes from Aquarius Love Hall. I think both of us are fans of his on Twitter. Give him a follow on Twitter @IDrewItUp. Strong and Herman's undoings, buy or sell, were largely because they screwed around with inferior opponents and made games closer than they needed to be. I guess this is the real buy or sell question. That was a statement of fact from Aquarius.
Oh, okay. I was like, buy? Go ahead.
That was his statement of fact.
Yeah.
Buy or sell? Okay, I like this question. Sark's average margin of victory is greater than 10 this season.
Ooh.
Good question.
Sell.
Close games. Okay, buy or sell. This one comes from at Big Cheddar Farm D on Twitter.
Yeah,
baby. AKA Chad Gibson. Buy or sell, regardless of which quarterback is named the starter, he will throw for more than 3,500 yards and 30 touchdowns.
30. Wow. So you're talking about close to 4,000 yards?
Not close to 4,000, just more than 3,500. Like, that's only halfway.
I mean, you only talk about being 2 games away from it, though. 2 really good games away from that, about like 250 each. So I'm selling. I'm going to sell on that one.
All right. And
before you go,
our final buy or sell question of the day comes from David Allen at Doc_Texas on Twitter. Very notable Texas fan on Twitter. Does Texas buy or sell? Texas moves inside the national top 25 in rushing defense this year.
In rushing defense. Where were they? Golly, we wish I had a point of reference. I don't know if can't remember off the top of my head where they were last year in rushing defense and try to get an idea of the gains. And I have ideas where they were from a conference standpoint, but like from a national, it's a lot of stats to keep up. Top 25 rushing defense.
I'm looking it up right now for you. Okay.
All right. The filibuster.
So that you filibuster. By the way, Texas A&M was second in the nation last year in run defense. Texas was 38th.
Okay, so we're talking about slight improvement there. So 38th to 25.
So Texas was 140 yards per game rushing to get into the top 25 last year. In a year when fewer teams played, they would have needed to get that down another 11 yards down to 129.
They also had fewer games too. So, yes. But then again, I wasn't expecting USF to run wild on them, nor Kansas. So maybe those numbers look a little bit better with those two games in there. So I think they finished right. I'm going to sell. I think they finished right outside of it. So I think they make gains. I definitely think they make gains. But I think I'm going like 28-ish or so, like 27. I think it's right outside.
All right. Well, that is how we play buy or sell. It's the first time we've done it on the YouTube channel. We always enjoy playing it. We owe you guys a lot of thanks for giving us the questions today. Good questions. I thought that the average margin of victory this season, maybe when I circle back around.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Good question.
It's really good. That was a really, really, really good question. Drew's on Orangebloods. I'm definitely in my notepads here. I'm going to write that one down because that's really fascinating.
All right. Your column comes out before mine.
So you already know. You already know what I'm writing for Sunday. Thank you, Drew. I need some help.
If it's not there, Drew, just know I'm stealing it from him.
Yeah.
So one way or the other, that question will be further inspected. But I'm guessing Anwar will get to it on his Sunday column before I get a chance.
Maybe.
But for myself and Anwar Richardson and all of Orangebloods.com, hopefully we entertained you guys. Subscribe, hit the like button if either of those two things was true. Hopefully we also explained the whole purpose of this channel in the first place. And hopefully we're speaking to a lot of new eyeballs out there. Give Orangebloods a chance. Check out the free trial. You'll have seen it during the video, as Anwar is able to put that up during the video to let everybody know to sign up. Basically, you can sign up today and it's free all the way until the first game. You get all the way through August. And if we can't prove during the dead season that you need to be with us during the football season, then we're not doing our jobs well enough. We're very confident that if you give us a chance, you'll find out that you like more than just the YouTube video. But until tomorrow, you guys take care. We'll do it again soon. Later.